Don't complain about the future if you're not going to be part of the solution. If you've subscribed, I'll answer your comment below. Show me your wisdom. I dare ya.
I am out here for you. You don't know what it's like to be me out here for you.
We choose truth over facts.
Never go full retard. Come on, man.
Hey, there go. It is Cas from In the Trenches with Cas, and I am here with Buck, who knows more about national service, actual service, than Buck. He has been in the military. He was a crucial part of command control and communications, being in Signals Corps. He was also in the police force, so he got to see the lack of brotherhood that happens in the police force as opposed to the military. And then he thought, I'm going to go where the grass is greener. He went to the prison system. Hey, team, how we going? It is Cas from In the Trenches with Cas, and we are here today at BAM, the pointy end, to give you experts' opinion on conscription, national service, the difference in between the reaction to Erin Molan and Heston Russel, commandos, retired from military, that is, as well as another gentleman, I don't know who he is. And this is all about not even a debate, a discussion on conscription, national service, fors against, and alternatives to the dumpster fire we're creating at the moment. So what we're going to do is throw some evidence on the screen. We're going to listen to two experts, and what you can do is look at the messages we put on the bottom of the screen and respond to that in comments as you subscribe to my channel and Buckeroonie's channel, Mr. Buckeroonie. Okay, if you want something more positive, I'm more about the spreading of a conversation. Bucko, welcome to the channel and to our forum to start a conversation. Is there anything you want to say before we unveil this video that you haven't seen yet?
Not really, mate. Thanks for having me on, Cas. Really appreciate it, mate. And I'm looking forward to this. As we know, Sky News at the moment, I've seen a lot of their stuff and that, and they've been a little bit critical of the ADF, and in particular the leadership of the ADF. And I'm pretty sure this one here is going to be no different, mate. So looking forward to watching this. And I've seen a lot of stuff from Heston Russel, mate, and I like that young fella. I can say that because I'm getting old now. But I tell you what, he's a good young fella. He would have been a great leader. Probably something we'll talk about later, mate, but I would have liked to have seen him stay in the military and maybe go up through the ranks, because I think we need leaders like him, mate.
We definitely do. And sadly, leaders diminish leaders, or managers diminish leaders when they have nepotism against those below them that are showing that they actually have the pluck to be better than what they are themselves before their time. Now, this guy, Heston Russell's got more than enough pedigree to be able to make an informed opinion. So let's get into it. So let's see what you've got, Erin.
In the midst of one of the most uncertain global landscapes in nearly a century, there's absolutely no denying the fact this country is completely unprepared militarily for what's to come. The blame game, well, we play it often, but it doesn't help us now, does it? We don't have nearly enough soldiers or weapons. And some say we are on the brink of World War III. In fact, Lincoln was just telling me as he left, so our military, our defence force, has about 57,000 personnel.
Of a population of 27 million that we've surpassed, and we've got one regiment of infantry, which is completely undermanned, okay, and also completely discompartmentalised by having mechanised, motorised, amphibious elements of semi-light infantry. It doesn't work that way, team. You need to be able to replace each other in operational tempo. This is people that should be preparing for war, and that is it. Not domestic response, not assisting in disasters. That is not their job. The role of the infantry is to seek out and close the enemy, to kill or capture him, to seize and hold ground, to repel attack by day or night, regardless of season, weather, or terrain. That is our job description. Okay, it is not to help the weak. Remember that. And everyone in the military is there to support the one corps, two corps really, and that is the infantry and the cavalry. Those share the faux fever forward of the forward edge of the battle area. So let's get into it.
The NYPD has just over 50,000 workforce, the NYPD. So what can we do now that might actually make a difference? Alexei Murayev wrote a controversial piece this week calling for the return of conscription. Heston Russel is a veteran, a retired Special Forces commander who says no way. Now, they both join me now. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you so very much for joining me. Alexi, I'll hand over to you first off.
Before we start, Bucko, conscription, yes or no?
No, not at the moment, mate. Not conscription, no.
Yep. Okay, what about this one? Since when was freedom free?
Yeah, it's not, mate.
So those that look at us making videos like this and watching others in uniform, whether that be police, ambulance, okay, whether it be fire brigade, whether it be Army, Air Force, Navy, people aren't going to keep just stepping up for you. Eventually, it's going to be your turn or it's going to be your kid's turn, especially if we're talking about domestically protecting the girt by sea, not necessarily in foreign wars. However, you also have to be loyal to your greatest allies that are supporting you and actually have troops residing in our country for our own protection as well.
Absolutely.
Well, Erin, first of all, I don't like to use the word conscription. I didn't use the word conscription. I've seen bad examples of conscription. What I was referring to was a potential introduction in a new form of national service. And by national service, I imply a whole way approach where we would address not just ongoing shortfalls with our standing force, and that includes questions concerning retention, questions concerning rotation in terms of our operational commitments.
What he's talking about there was exactly what I just mentioned, operational tempo. If you've got guys in a theatre that suit that theatre and they go in there as mechanised, tracked vehicles, infantry fighting vehicles, which we've now bought a quarter of what our promise was to buy, yeah. Okay, you can't necessarily replace them then with motorised, which is armoured vehicles with wheels, okay, as opposed to tracked vehicles, or then potentially replace them with light infantry, and definitely can't replace them with amphibious recon forces.
As well as having sufficient resource pool for high-end operations, because the current force that we have is better optimized for low-level intensity conflicts, but not for high-end warfare. But we also need to address similarly issues concerning skilled workforce for our booming defense industry. We need to look at potential issues concerning bolstering the ranks in the emergency services, and that was obviously highlighted by the COVID emergency. So you actually can address a number of significant issues. And certainly I'm not proposing replacing the professional force with all-out conscript force. I think perhaps in an ideal setting we can talk about mixed force, where you would still have certain types of jobs in the military that will have to be performed by professional soldiers.
Okay, Bucker, I'm going to quickly put this on for a sec so people understand. Conscription means you don't have a choice. Someone has come and got a shoehorn and they've actually put that on your asshole, and then they've flicked you off your Xbox chair, taken the Cheetos out of your hands, bloody attached you to a treadmill for 6 weeks, put a gun in your hand, and then said, I trust you behind me with live rounds, when you're highly likely to run with your little vegan soy-powered ass in the opposite direction and leave me to my own devices. I don't want to serve with conscripts. I never would. This is what my unit looked like. Professional troops that want to be there.
Our amphibious are the commander's eyes and ears on the battlefield. We arrive under the cover of darkness.
Could you imagine a conscript? It's too fucking cold. My gear's wet. I'm chafing. My back hurts. Where's the coffee shop? Why is there meat in the ration pack?
Yeah.
You know, I thought there was more of you. You said they. No, that's just me pronouns. Oh, shit, we're in trouble. They just enlisted. How many of them? One. You said they.
Seeking out the enemy, searching for him. He never knows we are there. When given the order to engage, we act swiftly.
Looks like they're attacking Bunnings there. Okay, you get the picture. This is what professional soldiers look like. Implied tasks. They do all the little things greatly before they're asked, and that makes them professional. Special forces are people that do those things even better. Okay, where almost everyone in the call sign's a leader anyway.
I want to talk, just remind me to bring up that film clip a little bit later in the conversation when we talk about recruiting, mate.
Okay, was that your shed they took out?
No,
Was that your illegal? Was that your illegal still?
Obviously need to have significant more number of troops as well as organized reserve that is can be called in and bolster the ranks should the contingency require it.
Alexia, national service is obviously a very different thing to conscription. In 30 seconds or less, how would it work? How do you propose it would work so then I can get Heston's response?
Okay, what is more important, national service or your feelings? Because eventually you're going to be asked to do something in life that you're not ready for or you're not willing to do, but it's for the greater good of the family, of the tribe, of the village. For you, that might be working on a normal day. For you, it might be staying awake. It could be taking your children and giving them the best life despite the fact that you're tired as shit. You know, we all do things we're not meant to do. Maybe this is identified differently from people that are adults as opposed to those that are old enough to be considered an adult, but not yet realized they actually aren't. You know, really it should come down to who should be allowed to vote. Because otherwise you can end up with the cowards voting down national service because it serves their interests rather than the national security.
Well, first of all, we need to determine the future optimal size of the defense forces. For example, I'm not talking about introducing, for example, a 1 million-strong army that would require an annual call of 125,000 personnel or around that type. So that would be the first thing. The second thing is drawing from where? Obviously, we need to start working from the school level upwards, because in the first instance, we need to change the attitude from treating recruitment in the defense force as a job, as a career, but actually introduce.
Oh, absolutely. Before I forget, Cas, because I'm getting old now and I forget quickly, treating it as a career. The military isn't a career anymore, Cas. I don't know about you, mate, but when I joined the Army in 1982, it was a career. And I remember sitting in high school, my last year of high school at Harvey Bay in 1981, Defence Force recruiters. They had the whole auditorium of the Harvey Bay High School. And we had Army, Navy and Air Force recruiters come in and address the whole of the high school. And they walked in, and I remember as a young fella just looking at them in their uniforms. And that's all I wanted to do, mate. And they told us about all the great jobs that were in the Army, Navy and Air Force. I had my heart set on the Army. And it was a career, mate, because when I joined, there was a thing called DFRDB. If you did 20 years in the military, you got a pension at the end of it. And guess what? I did my 20 years in the Army, and I'm on DFRDB and have been since the day I got out of the Army in 2003, 1st of January 2003. I've been getting a fortnightly pension ever since. And that pension put my daughter through private school. It put her through university. She's now a speech pathologist. It was a career, mate. In 1991, they came out on the parade grounds at Laverack Barracks in Townsville and said, we're getting rid of DFRDB. There's this new thing called MSBS coming in. That doesn't exist anymore either. Now it's just like a normal job, mate. You go in, it's just like a normal job. There's no incentive to punch on and do your 20 years. I got to 10 years and I went, do I keep? And I thought, yeah, I'm halfway there. I'm halfway to the carrot. I want to get that carrot. And I got it. And it's the best thing I ever did, mate. There's none of that for these young kids now. Bring it back as a friggin' career and get Defence Force recruiters back into high schools. Exactly what this fella said.
I completely agree. I've spoken in high schools in a recruiting capacity.
Yeah.
And I got the luxury of doing it in the school that I actually went to, my high school, Newcastle High School. And I can tell you what, all of these supposable kids, ADHD, the girls, that don't want to be part of this bullshit. Every single woman, young woman and young man that was in that classroom, there wasn't one word spoken other than a question. They weren't looking to the left. They weren't looking to the right. They were not distracted. They were sitting there like they were looking at a god. because they saw
Yes.
an actual bit of leadership standing in front of them that wasn't frumpy, that was capable, that had eye contact and communication skills, that was telling them that you can be something more. And they loved it. But you don't get a chance to follow up to see how they go like the American recruiting does. So let's get into this.
For example, the patriotism, something that somehow we start feeling.
Where did the patriotism go? There is a deliberate reason patriotism is not here, which goes down to all industries. Is it deliberate? Are the politicians, when did you hear the last politician say that they loved Australia? The only politician with any leadership whatsoever that I believe is Peter Dutton, but he's so hard to trust and believe. I don't know if it's a bald man gets no respect thing or whether it's the fact that he doesn't speak well to the people about once being a police officer and using those facts of him on the street where he could use that anecdotally to be able to say, guys, gals, I grew up on the streets. I saw the good, the bad, and the ugly. You know, I know that Australia is better than this. We are the best for our population in the entire world in the Olympics. When it comes to donations for foreign countries like Arche and disasters, Australia raised over $1 billion. Never let anyone tell you you are not the best country in the world. You are fucking amazing, but you have people trying to tell you you're not. Don't be ashamed. You've got nothing to say sorry to anyone, and don't go around with this victim mentality so many countries have that think that they're owed something. You're not. You earn what's on your plate. If you don't earn anything, then you shouldn't get fed, or at least you shouldn't be allowed to fucking vote. Okay.
And ashamed of actually using or referring to it. So we need to go back to the school level and create a system that would allow kids to make up decisions and make up their minds from the cadet level onwards.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And patriotism is a huge issue in this country, particularly with young people. And I know a lot of kids who do cadets have been made to feel ashamed of that at school. Heston, what is your response to something akin to national service?
Yeah, Erin, I think the key determination between conscription and national service needs to be made. Conscription is an outdated policy that can only be applied in wartime.
It also has never been used. We've used national service. Bucko, what do you know about conscription World War I?
Well, I remember watching a TV series, and a great series. If anyone's never seen it, it's called Anzacs, and Paul Hogan was in it. It's an old series, but it's worth a watch. And this happened in World War I. Because we were starting to struggle, at the start of World War I, guys, we had a big influx. Everyone wanted to volunteer and go away and fight for the Commonwealth, fight for Australia. You know how many people we lost in World War I. Towards the end of the war, we were starting to struggle for numbers. So what they did, the Prime Minister at the time, Billy Hughes, brought in a referendum of whether they should bring in conscription or not. And it got voted down in 1916 and again in 1917. So I don't think Australia's ever been so far under the pump as in needing soldiers as World War I, maybe World War II as well. It got voted down in World War I, Cas. So if it didn't get up in World War I, it ain't going to get up now, mate. So that's the one time we tried conscription, World War I. Both times it got voted down.
Well, when they woke the dragon in World War I with Australia, we had a population, I believe, what was it, 4 or 6 million? And more than 420,000 Australian men deployed, to the World War I theatres. You know, for other countries' plight when Mother England called, but also the plight of the French. Also all of the countries around there. Okay, so Australia, when it's time to step up, they step up, and they don't need to be jimmied off the seat. Don't let this be the first generation that does.
Imagine, and I know the professors at Curtin University trying to get any of his students to compulsorily be going overseas to fight in combat. It doesn't work, and what it does, it introduces a culture into a fighting force that actually causes more casualties, more injuries, and detracts from capability.
Before we get any further, just remember this guy is a Special Forces officer from the 2nd Commando Regiment.
This is the current cultural and leadership crisis we have in our military that sees the highest levels of exodus, the lowest levels of recruitment, and less veterans more likely to sign up and serve under the current leadership. Pouring water into a broken bucket is useless, and first and foremost, we need to re-establish a defence leadership that is able to be trusted by those that serve underneath it. That comes from standards, that comes from accountability.
So we've already seen Okay, the head of the Defence Force, Angus Campbell, refusing to take responsibility for his contribution to what's been going on, and they've even given him a second commitment. On top of that, the standards have never been lower to join the military, and that is going to flow on to these people with low standards potentially staying in and then getting promoted and then passing on and breeding even lower standards because they think that's normal. If you ever heard the saying, you don't know what you don't know, well, that's a great thing because I could go in there and teach every single unit, things that they don't know that they should know because I was there for multi-generations of military service.
Yeah.
You don't know what you don't know.
That comes from leadership, and we've seen the last few years from the war crimes issues through to our Defence Force personnel being deployed in support of every humanitarian assistance, disaster relief, COVID op support, actually detracting from the practical fighting capability of our Defence Force. I believe there's a huge opportunity to introduce something like a National Guard where we incentivise young Australians coming out of school to do a couple of years' service in an unarmed humanitarian assistance, disaster relief role, projecting soft.
I love that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's something people could get behind.
Yes.
Like instead of a gap year, dude, you're going to wear a uniform, no weapon to clean. Okay. All you're going to have is your fighting order. And I don't even mean fighting. I mean, your water, your food.
Working order.
Yeah. And basically you're going to hang around in a group. You're probably going to meet your partner or your ex or your next divorce partner in this group you work with.
Yeah.
You'll definitely find out about something about yourself.
Power within the Asia Pacific region that then goes towards credits like, I don't know, paying for their placement when they do a nursing degree or when they do a trade. The first few years towards a university degree, some capable skills that we have a shortfall within Australia, a modulated phase and a staged approach that actually incentivise and helps to build more of that national pride, that lived experience that we're so deficit of on our isolated, insulated bubble, and actually working out the key issues like the Royal Commission into Defence and Veteran Suicide is exposing every single month that comes down to leadership, accountability and standards that will attract the right Australians who will provide the best fighting capability, not simply numbers for an output, but the right people for an input to provide whatever capability Australia requires in the Asia Pacific region or to force project should we need to support any of our allies overseas.
Alexi, a lot of vets feel the exact same way that Heston does, both privately and publicly. Would you acknowledge that there's no point trying to attract a whole crop of recruits and young people to feel passionately and want to defend their nation or be more patriotic if they get into an organisation that, say, is rotting from the head down, where the leadership is not strong and not sorted out?
If I had any kind of pluck whatsoever, and I was the chief of the Defence Force, Angus Campbell, and I saw this sort of video, I wouldn't need to be asked twice. I go, if you don't think that I can do the job as Julius Caesar on behalf of all Australian forces, Army, Navy, Air Force, and national security, I would step down before I disgrace my family name. If you're Japanese, you'd already have a sword in your guts.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have to be told that you can't do the job or you're compromised. Maybe you can do his job. But if people have the innuendo that you cannot do your job and standards have rotted beneath you and you don't take any accountability whatsoever, and you also never actually speak to the man in the trenches, then you've lost connect, just like our politicians have with the rest of Australia.
Absolutely, 100% agree with that.
Thank you.
I mean, there is no point in drafting people against their will, and certainly this is not what I argue for. We need to have motivation. We need to have a different sense of purpose for those who are joining the ranks. That's the fundamental issue, and that's why I'm talking about something that needs to be addressed both bottom up, right from the school level onwards. But I totally agree about the need to sort this out at the strategic level, at the strategic decision making and leadership level. You know, one of the reasons why we face this ongoing shortages is because the government continues to commit defense to do all sorts of jobs, regardless whether they can, whether they stretch beyond the capacity, whether you have to rotate same units time and time again because you basically call on the same boys and girls, and that's not sustainable. Equally, it's not sustainable to expect to defend the country our size as well as with our interests. And I'm not talking about territorial defense. I'm talking about, obviously, outer defense as well with the force that we have right now. I mean, we can also look at potentially addressing the issue of bolstering the ranks by in providing incentives for the migrants to do.
I love this. There should only be a certain ratio of immigrants that are allowed to be in a unit so it doesn't actually become a version of their old country. But what better way to treat a young woman or a young man with honour and respect and make them a true Australian, absolutely full of pride with all the receipts, by saying Abdul or Tamika or whatever their names are. You're going to serve 2 to 4 years. You know, you're going to get a medal. You're going to have the Australian flag there. You're going to be immersed in sports, in culture, in conversations. Your voice matters. We respect you. Okay, you're going to have free travel within Australia. Not free, it's paid for. You're going to walk out of there and you're going to be a condensed version that could take an entire generation to be able to create the same sort of bonding with the country and realise you actually are home. Yeah. I'd love to have 2 immigrants in every section, you know, and bring them up as Aussies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Time in some sort of support roles in exchange for streamlining into the citizenship role. I mean, this is something that's been practiced by a number of countries.
Yes, I don't want to, sorry to cut you off, but Heston, I'd love your response to that idea before we have to go.
Yeah, Erin, just very quickly, look, there was a census done in 2021. There's close to 600,000 veterans in this country. You and I know, and I'm happy to have this written down in blood or ink, that the day that Angus Campbell is removed from the Chief of Defence Force and the day that Moriarty is removed from Secretary of Defence, and there are people who actually get in there who care about our people and the national purpose they have, is the day you'll likely see more of those veterans re-enlist. You're likely to see more of those veterans endorsing our brothers, our sisters, our nephews, our nieces, our sons and our daughters to enlist. The day that we fix the culture at the top is the day that we actually have a fighting force that will grow again and get back to where Australia has been at the standards and excellence our international partners know that we can deliver.
How worried are you about the state of our military and defence force at the moment, Heston?
Erin, I know deep down, even today I was at an inspection in Sydney and a parent of her daughters in the Navy. There are good people out there who are the right people who will defend our nation if we need it. I'm worried about people in suits sitting back and sending young Australian sons and daughters to fight in wars for others. We need to realign our defence force to defend our national interests. We need to become the masters of the Asia-Pacific region, and we need to focus on building a defence force filled of the right people to deliver whatever capability outcome, not simply bums on seats or names on a spreadsheet.
Yeah, I think you both make excellent points. Alexi and Heston, thank you both so very much. It's such an important issue and solving it is incredibly difficult, but we cannot put it in the too hard basket anymore because our lives and future depend on it. Both of you, thank you so much for coming on.
Well said, Erin. Yeah. She speaks well, that lady. Yeah.
She actually does. You know, that was a really good panel where there was no negativity. They were just, not only were they explaining things, but they were giving solutions. You should always have a solution to a problem. 2 things have happened in the last 36 hours that have really distressed me. We've got a young fella, 17 years old, who knew his father didn't want him to join the military. He knew his father wasn't going to back his play. He was at high school at the moment. So what he did, he went into the recruiting office. He did everything as a 17-year-old. You know, he got through every single thing. He got through the aptitude test, the U session, through the interview, through the medical, through the psychological screening, through the PFA. He's done everything. And now when he receives his enlistment date to go to Kapuka, his father said, I will deliberately block you from service because, one, I just don't want you to do it. I don't want a son in the army. You feel like going, dude, you can't block someone's dreams. What is going on in your brain? You know, and if you hold your son back or your daughter back, guess what? You'll probably lose them forever. You know, if his passion isn't a computer degree or a trade, you know, or going to university, then share his vision, you know, and have a conversation with him rather than just say, regardless of what you say, I'm not going to listen and I'm going to destroy your dreams. The other one was yesterday I went to the shopping centre and I went in there just to buy some meat for the dog, okay, some lamb chops for the ex, because of the price of everything. And I went to the counter and there was a young guy. He looked pretty odd, today's generation, Z generation. And he had a name tag and it had the LGBT flag and it had the Aboriginal flag. And I thought, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe there's not a room to put the Australian flag on there. And maybe this is not a deliberate, this is my politics at the counter, which shouldn't be allowed by an organisation. So I started off peacefully and I said, hey, mate, how you going? I was the only person at the counter. He didn't look at me. I went, okay. He started to scan the things. And I said, how was your day, mate? Didn't look up at me again. So I said, okay, it's war. I went, looked at him and said, hey, mate, I see you've got every flag except the one that truly matters on your name tag. He looked up at me like a meerkat that had just seen a lion in the distance. His eyes just locked with me. He didn't blink and he goes, and what flag would that be? I said, well, that'd be the Australian flag. He goes, I don't talk about politics at work. I went, well, I'm sorry, mate. Well, it's too late because you've brought politics to the checkout and you're the only checkout I can go to. And he looked at me. He got his card around his neck on its lanyard. He went, bam. He was halfway through the transactions and just went, bam, logged off and ran from his checkout. And then seconds later, I hear an old lady who's a shift supervisor go, we've got a racist on aisle 8. And I'm like, what the hell? So this guy's already on stress leave before I've scanned some pineapple, and probably crying as well. I couldn't see him because of the sound of his feet flapping on the fucking ground as he ran off in his clothes. And she came over and said, what did you actually say? One, I don't have to say what I said, but I told her the truth. There's no point in lying. And I said, I didn't say a single thing disparaging about the flag support that he had on his name tag, which spoke about his sexuality. Why do I need to know that? The Aboriginal flag, don't mind at all. But what about the Australian flag? And she went, and you could see that this guy is an ongoing problem. But if you were going to have mental health people working in your facility, who are actually going to track off in the middle of a bloody transaction, what is our world coming to and why do we not expect it? Okay, if we don't fix it, if we keep to tolerate it, if we pretend we believe in this insanity gesture of weakness, then how are we ever going to be a country that is not plucked off by stronger countries, developing countries that see Australia as the land of the weak? Probably won't.
Hey, Cas, can I say something on that?
Yep.
Exactly what happened to you there. I've noticed that now, mate, and I'm going to have a crack at the younger generation yet again. I don't think they know how to talk to people, mate. I do it all the time, whether it's in the gym, downtown, in a shop. I say the first thing I do is how I think, g'day, mate, how are you? I say to everybody, or g'day, miss, how are you, or whatever. Some of these young kids do not know how to answer and say, I'm good, thanks, how are you, mate? They don't know how to, they just don't know. I get young blokes walk past me in the gym and I go, how you going, mate? And they just look at you and keep walking. And I feel like pulling them up and saying, don't you fucking know how to say g'day back, mate? It's just a thing of respect that you and me were taught, Cas, as young blokes. This new generation has fucking lost the plot, mate. I'm going to have a rant. And that's why we're in the position we are today. We got bad leadership, yes. But I'll tell you what, we need to start, I don't know, mate, we've lost it. And that's why everyone's struggling. It's not just the ADF. I know the Queensland Police Service can't fucking get people to join up either. It's a problem, and I don't know how to fix it. Well, I'd like to have a crack at fixing it, but I'm not in the position to do so, mate.
Mate, I was just on the Zero Limits podcast again on Friday, and that video will come out soon with Matty Morris doing a fantastic job. He's overseas at the moment. And one of the solutions, I believe, we hear about quota all the time. But when I go to primary schools, high schools, etc., what I see is there's absolute desert of testosterone. I believe what there needs to be is an incentive for men that have already had careers to then be fast-tracked into the schooling system, mostly high school, and go in there and be motivational, but also be there to help with dream building, because there's way too much estrogen in our high schools, going with that female energy, rather than having half of it at least male energy, where there's testosterone, where there's people out kicking the ball with them in the playground, where little conversations and mentorship is happening in the absence of having a father at home. It's so important that people hear the wisdom of people that have lived and are treating them with respect, having a conversation, saying to them, hey, have eye contact when you look at people. Don't sit on your phone when we have a conversation. So just passively, they become better humans, because that's exactly what used to happen in the village of all countries. All villages, all civilizations, all successful ones were normally pinned to strong male role models that guided the ship in a positive direction that was about capability, not about feelings. Yeah.
These things have got a lot to do with it, Cas.
They're excellent, but I agree.
They are good, but they are, I'm sure, if you backtrack, that's when our problem started, this shit.
Yep. It's because those with evil agendas can now bypass parents and go straight into the ear of the child.
Yeah.
Yep. Mate, I'm going to let you finish off as the summary of this one before I end the recording and get this video out for people today. A call out to all our serving people and all those about to serve. Yeah. Guys and gals, you deserve the best people behind you. You really do. And I'm behind you. You know, you can find me in the Patreon link below if you need a coach or someone who supports your journey. Okay, I'm going to pass over to Buck now, and we're going to finish off with that because he's a servant of the nation. That's for sure. Bucko?
Few things I want to say, Cas. Firstly, thank you to what you do, mate. I've said it before and I'll say it again. You should be on the Australian Defence Force recruiting payroll, mate. You do so much for getting these young kids that watch your channel, and there's a lot of them out there, to get them to go into the military, mate. And I don't know if you know how many have joined the military because of your guidance, mate. But well done, and thanks for what you do. It's not easy getting these young kids now to want to join the military, as we've seen. But to all those young ones out there that are thinking of joining the military, don't listen to all the negative people saying, don't go in, don't do this. Me and Cas have been in there. I did over 20 years. So did Cas. I had a wonderful career and met some of the best mates and mates for life. And I still keep in touch with them now, ex-army mates. And that'll happen to you too. So go in there with a positive attitude. Don't listen to all the negative. So for anyone who's thinking of joining, do it. And I take my hat off to you. Well done for having the balls there and get a spoon of Vegemite India. Thank you for even having the patriot, that big word, Cas, to want to join the military. So thanks. So you can see how passionate me and Cas are about it. Have a look at the flags behind me. My granddad was a light horseman. I did 20 years. Where's that thing? Cop, correctional officer, all that type of stuff. I didn't do that because I want people to go, oh, I did it because I wanted to do it and I wanted to serve my country and my state. And I look back now and I'm very proud of what I've achieved. So keep that in your mind. Remember, Cas, President Kennedy once said, don't ask what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. How true are those words, Cas? And we need to start thinking a bit more like that, mate. What can I do to make my country a bit better? And we're not, I'm going to join the military or I'm going to do well at school. I want to do this. I want to go to university and then I want to be that. Set yourself some goals and do your best to achieve them. And if it means going into the military or the police or whatever, do it. And I highly recommend you go in and do a few years in the army and the military. If you like it, stay in there. And then if you want to go in a different direction, go and join the police or go into a different field. But make sure that you're making a difference. Make sure you're in that positive thing where you just do a little bit more than what you receive. And then the whole country will be better off for it, Cas. And I'll just leave you another thing. There's a big difference, everyone, between managers and leaders, okay? Yep. Big difference. And I'll give you a classic example. I did 13 years after I got out, 20 years in the army and then 6 years as a Queensland police officer. And then I changed over to the prison system, became a correctional officer, working in a high security prison out of Townsville. I did 13 years there. We had managers there in that organisation. We didn't have leaders. And that's why it was a rock show. And that's why I left that organisation. I could not put up with the incompetence. And managers cannot make decisions. Leaders make decisions. And one thing I was taught in the army, it's better to make a wrong decision than no decision at all. And I just could not be in an organisation where our supposed leaders, who were no more than managers, couldn't make a decision. They hadn't come up through the ranks, Cas, in corrections. They came in sideways as a manager. They hadn't been down at grassroots. They hadn't been in a unit of 50 prisoners threatening to kick their heads in and kill them or whatever. They came in sideways. They'd never done the job, and they weren't leaders' arseholes. And we're starting to see a bit of that in the military too. Needs to be sorted out, as Heston said, mate. Thanks for having me on today, Cas. I really appreciate it.